Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Hello, Otterites. This is episode 195.
I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
Gentlemen, it is Code of Honor.
Hallelujah.
It is obviously the one we like the most. It is, to me, the most... it is the epitome of what it means to be Snakes and Otters.
The crux.
Yes. It is the best of what we are to sit around and talk about these weighty matters. And today, we do have a weighty matter. Because even though we're not going to do quotes from a particular person, because last episode, which would have been a couple of weeks ago now, we did Scumbags of the Revolution. We're going to be talking about honor. We're truly going to do a code of honor about honor. Mm-hmm. So that was my suggestion, and the gentlemen have decided to honor my request. Boom, boom.
Well, after you announced it at the end of the last episode, we kind of are trapped.
Well, that's just my sneakiness.
We can't squirrel out of it.
Well, you guys didn't have to agree, but you did.
We were on the spot, so
yeah. So, well, yeah.
But we're kicking it here at the Atrium in Studio
That's
R.
true. We didn't even mention that last time. We got so caught up in being excited with Marcus Aurelius being here, we didn't even talk about where we were.
Marcus Aurelius was our guest and visited us for the last episode. It was a terrific discussion, and it was wonderful to see him. I thought he looked great.
Yes, he's lost quite a bit of weight, moving around a lot easier, a lot better. I told him last night when I talked to him on the phone that even in his voice, he sounds like he feels better.
He sounds like him.
Very much so.
He sounds like him. His face looking good, and
yep.
Yeah,
so
he was a ton of fun to have here.
Yep, always a good time. So that was great to have him here. So we are in the atrium here, overlooking the backyard and the large downed tree beyond my fence that came down last month in one of the big windstorms. Trees are getting green again, so we're getting that nice, wonderful view out the backyard. I love recording here.
Got kind of some wildflowers out back past the fence.
Yeah. When it rains really heavy and out beyond the fence, because even though we do get a little bit of water in the yard, it gets really deep out there. We have ducks that will swim.
No.
That's how deep the water will get out there. But it's not like that now. It's in really good shape. So we're going to do quotes about honor. Mm-hmm. So, Martin, I nominate you to go first.
All right. So, Calvin Coolidge.
Of course you picked that.
Silent Cal.
That's right.
Which is odd, because you can use a quote from a guy we call Silent.
Yeah, from a guy that didn't talk much. But just shows when he did talk, and that was part of his philosophy, was, a president's word carries weight.
Yes.
You should be careful when using them. Is a Calvin Coolidge thing. So the quote is, "No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave."
Oh, very nice.
So that
I saw that. Yeah,
immediately grabbed.
I saw something similar. Yeah,
and being a Coolidge. So that's kind of the in the sense of honoring another person, not necessarily your personal honor, quote.
Yeah.
But the honor when you think of another person that you consider an honorable person, it's all about what they've given.
Yes.
And not about what they have received.
So it comes from
what you have done.
Inside out, not the outside in.
Yeah. And it's about character.
Right. Yes. That's right. Because
it's about the spirit of I have to do something that holds up my end of the blanket. Society's that great big blanket, and we've all got a corner, and you got to hold up your end, and that's the honorable thing to do. So it's about what you gave. You worked. Work is honorable because it's giving of yourself. Yes, you get paid, but if the job didn't need doing, nobody would hire you to do it. So there's honor in that honest work. And it's all about what you gave of yourself.
So honor must be produced. It cannot be bestowed.
It's productive. It's bestowed on you, but it's because of what you've produced.
Well, I would hesitate to use the word productive because that seems to imply a quantification.
Well, that's why I laid that out there.
Yeah, and I don't think you can quantify.
You're quite right.
Because I think there's a danger in that you get too mechanistic, too likely to start seeing others as things.
Too utilitarian.
Yes, too utilitarian. We do
That's
not
right.
need any more John
Is-
Stuart Mills.
Yeah.
That's right. We burned him in effigy once. We can
Yeah.
do it again if
Although
we need to.
we did discover there were some things that weren't so bad about him, as we often will.
Well,
do
that's one of the
when-
reasons that he's still read and
Right.
and followed.
Yeah.
So many today.
But we do have to, because I would say that honor and utilitarianism, I wouldn't say they're diametrically opposed, because they're not. It implies that they are the opposite of one another in that sense.
Well,
But utility would not see value in honor.
well, that's right. It'd be irrelevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Be irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Yes, the utility wouldn't even. It would be a foreign concept. Honor would be a foreign concept.
Yeah, outside the scope of the way they come together.
And you could do something that is incredibly unproductive that still holds great honor in that sense. So I don't think it would. That's why I hesitate to use.
But generally,
produce. To me, it's the act.
Yeah, it's It has to be a selfless thing.
Yes, absolutely. If it's done for
Oh.
selfish reasons, it is no longer honorable.
Oh, so and yet it is still produced.
Right. Not all produced things. Not all acts are honorable.
Well, that's correct. That's right. Yeah. So, in other words, the teleology here, the intention, the purpose of honor, then, is to be created for a noble purpose.
I don't know that you can assign purpose to honor. It's kind of like. It's like, to me, that's like trying to assign purpose to dignity.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
They are both things that just are. They're good things that we would want to describe somebody with, but they are an ends to themselves, not a means.
So they do not function teleologically. In other words, they don't have a purpose in their.
They're more
beyond
ontological.
themselves. That's correct.
And they're not truly ontological because they're not imbued and inherent.
Right.
But they do have. They are an end more than.
All right. Or are they? I mean, could they be inherent? I mean, just because you don't have it doesn't necessarily because all people don't have it, but it is still a universal concept.
Dignity, I think, is inherent because we've talked about, as we know, that's my thing.
And that's very true.
But honor, I don't think is as inherent.
It's dependent on your relations with others.
It is a function of...
It is a function of how you view and treat others. So I'm going to hit the button about
as
the
Coolidge
inherent
would say.
dignity of the human person.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. If you do not respect the inherent dignity of the human person, you cannot have honor.
Yeah, you're not going to act honorably in any way.
Right. So you could say that dignity is a precursor, and respecting dignity is a precursor to honor.
Yeah.
So honor is ultimately selfless. And
Yes, absolutely.
And can never be selfish.
I think so.
I think
And I think there's that's very perceptive of Coolidge. For
That's
someone
correct.
who he was essentially a politician his whole life.
Right.
Not someone given to philosophical flights.
Right.
He just did
He's a very practical guy.
Yeah, down home New England practical guy. That's a very insightful thing. And
Do you know what?
Honor is about what you gave of yourself to others.
But I think I think this is something that we have lost quite a bit as a country, as a civilization. I don't have to say specifically to our country, but that down home practicalness, that simple mindedness.
We have no common sense anymore.
The homespun wit and brilliance of a Lincoln or a Twain is often lost upon the current generation.
Well, true, but that's not quite where I was going with that. But is that how we're talking about honor? That would be, well, duh. I mean, they wouldn't put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think that would have just been part and parcel of their upbringing, their culture. They may not have used the word the way we're talking about it, but I think it would have been understood. There's a not to be sexist, but there's a gentlemanliness to honor. Mm-hmm. We talked about that in the last episode with
a genteelness.
A genteelness, yes, that would probably be a better way to put it.
Right.
And how Tarleton fought the American Revolution for the Brits. Mm-hmm. That there was no honor in the way he fought.
Right.
And you can make the argument that there was no honor in the way that Arnold fought. When he slaughtered those who surrendered himself.
That's right. That's great.
So yeah, I think honor is definitely tied to your relationship with other people. So look at it this way. It's not even so much what you do for them, but it can also be what you don't do to them.
So honor is an internal characteristic.
It's an internal characteristic, but in the sense that it is...
It's something that has to be
it doesn't happen to
externally.
You. Yes.
But you cannot be the object of honor.
Well, I mean, someone can act honorably towards you.
Yeah, but they've been...
Well, we talk about how we honor people. Like if there's a dignitary in a gathering, we honor them, shower praises upon them. That presumes though they are worthy of it, which often
it's like an award ceremony,
right?
Yeah. That's what Coolidge. He would view award ceremonies for like being in a movie that made $200 million. That's not really honor. They would call it that. We honor you with an Oscar.
Well, in a sense, it
you
is.
They gave a performance that we enjoyed.
And judged it to be superior to others by
and I think that
criteria.
I think that is a form of honor because you're looking, money aside, how much it earned, how stupid, because some of them really are, the endeavor might have been. It obviously gave enjoyment and entertainment to someone. And if there's enough enjoyment and entertainment, how is that any different than, say, giving some author a Pulitzer for the fantastic novel he wrote? I would argue that there's no clinical difference. Now, how they go about that is an entirely different thing.
Well, but any of those honors would really be kind of foreign to Coolidge. Because that would have been so much later. When we started to honor artistic works with awards and stuff, that would be foreign to his era and generation, really, almost. Because even
things like Oscars didn't come that much later than him. I mean, we're talking basically a decade later.
True.
So I don't know. I don't know when he died. So I mean, you make the argument that it's definitely a later generation. I mean, they would have been younger. Those would have been.
Yeah,
but I mean,
it's definitely it's not something he would have experienced much.
Well, giving medals to soldiers is a form of honor. So, I mean, again, that is specific if you're doing something.
Right, but that he would understand.
Yeah. But, I mean, in principle, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. In scope and in meaning, true meaning, deep meaning, yes, there's a huge difference. Between giving a medal to somebody for saving their entire platoon and for being the best supporting actress in a comedy filmed in some particular fashion and with this particular lighting, and it seems like they give a million different Oscars for the slightest distinction. So it's kind of watered it down. It used to be there were only a few Oscars, and that you were honored for truly being the best of the best of the best. And I think that's kind of the presumption. You can act with honor all day long, and nobody know it. Matter of fact, I would say the best honor is that honor which nobody even realizes is there.
Yeah. We're speaking of honor as a noun, not as a verb.
Yes,
I think so. For purposes of this discussion.
Yes. But like many nouns, there is an inherent verb that goes with it.
Correct, yeah, they're related. It's just, I think to get to the essence of honor, we have to concentrate.
Right, because the whole point of this was that the two people we discussed in the last episode had no honor.
Right, objectively so. By every history has judged them both to be that, and it was just that's a consistent judgment for 200 years.
Right.
So that's kind of why we decided let's roll with this.
Right, but I think honor is one of those things that So, the guy going about his life, taking care of his family, not cheating on his wife. Well, on the one hand, you might say, well, why should you be called out for that? That's the way you're supposed to act. Well, yes, but being fallen creatures, we know that a good number of people don't do the things that they ought to do.
Right.
In many ways,
standard is a standard because it matters.
Yeah.
There are reasons for that standard to matter.
And it's okay to give praise for beating the standard, because again, so many do not. It's let's have some encouragement for everybody's doing the right thing.
Right. I mean, if you call it out every day, all day, it becomes meaningless. But at least the occasional recognition that this is right and good and just is appropriate. Recognize that there are millions of people that go about their lives every day doing what they ought to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say doing what they ought to do, that means in relationship to others.
That's right.
I mean,
they treat
not lying,
right.
cheating, stealing,
the
killing.
only ones that make the news are the ones who act dishonorably.
Yeah.
But there are, in any one day, even when one person does something horrible, there's 330 million people that went to work and were decent to one another and the whole
That's
bit.
Right. So, Reacher, say your quote again. We feel like we've gotten a little bit away from it, perhaps.
Right. No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave.
Right. So when we were talking about things like the Oscars or the Pulitzer, that's exactly the definition that he's talking about. Yeah. They have done something worthy of recognition. And maybe that's the problem with the whole everyday honor thing, is that we no longer see that as worthy of recognition. It was considered at one time to be a very noble thing to quietly go about your life taking care of your family.
Sure.
I don't think it's seen as very noble anymore.
Well, not in the day of the constant celebrity that so many search after.
Everybody wants to be famous.
Yeah, exactly.
Acting honorably is no longer enough.
I call it the Richard Heaney syndrome. You remember the guy with the balloon boy?
What?
Oh, you guys don't remember that? Yeah, Richard Heaney was his name. Out in Colorado, he had a balloon that went off away, and he said that his son was in it. And they called this wasn't that many years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they followed it, and you had first responders from all over doing it. The kids upstairs in the attic. And it comes out to find out that was deliberate. They wanted the attention. They wanted to become reality TV stars. And the wife and he ended up, having to pay all those tens of thousands of dollars back. They also did time for it.
Oh, yeah. That's a misappropriation.
Oh, you betcha. That's right. They were, and they begged and pleaded, please don't do this to us. We have small children. And they said, denied. 40 years. Oh, that wasn't what they got, but
you should have thought of that.
That's exactly. And see, that's exactly the point. That's why I call it that, because this guy here in that pursuit of fame was willing to do the most dishonorable of things.
Yeah. He endangered other people's lives.
Well, yes, because he tied up resources for no reason
other than their own attempted glorification.
Yeah. And that is so right. Just where you see nothing of the world but what's within 3 inches of your face.
That is the ultimate dishonor.
Just had no concept of, gee, if I have ambulances chasing this balloon, that's endangering other people. There's no grasp
it's
of
also
reality.
kind of stupid, because I'm sorry, but how do you think this is? How did you not see the end of this?
Yeah, how do you not see how this is going to end?
Well, that's something that I ask myself quite often. It's like, how can you not see that things are going to end badly in so many situations? Mm-hmm. Now granted, we all have our blind spot moments, but generally those are small things. There's always where the consequences are small.
Yeah, there's always that hold my beer moment,
right? Or hold my bourbon moment.
Yeah,
yes,
because we don't want to spill our bourbon when we're going off and doing something stupid with Marcus Aurelius. Not that any of us have ever done that before.
We've often watched him do something silly, but sometimes
I've tagged along on more than a few.
Sometimes I just watch.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes there is when it comes to him, there's a great deal of fun in the watching. I will grant you that.
Yes.
But you wonder sometimes, how can you not realize the negative consequences for what you're about to do? Because it's not a small thing.
Right. The potential, just the potential. so many people cannot see, and I don't know how they do it. I really don't. Trying to figure out how you could rationalize yourself to the point where you become not only the winner, but a spectacular winner in this situation, which is what Heaney had to do. He had to see this as somehow a big thing.
This is going to get us
and reality came in and just it didn't smack him in the face. It Mike Tyson punched him in the face.
Oh yeah.
Yep, he had a plan, and then he got punched in the face.
That's right. As my illusion.
Talk about reality putting his foot so far up his behind, he got to tie his shoes in his mouth.
That's right, and the children suffered for that.
Yeah,
ultimately they did.
Well, they may have been better off afterwards. I
know.
Think about what kind of parent. I don't want to pile on this guy. That's not the point. But when you think about what kind of parents those are that would do something so hugely, monumentally stupid
and narcissistic.
It
stems from the narcissism.
Yes.
Let's not forget that.
It's like Martin just said, though. How can you not? It's somebody who can't see 3 inches beyond their face.
Yeah.
And it goes. We talk about this all the time, and I hate to pummel the expired equine. It's that ultimate narcissism where you don't. It's not that I don't think they can't see the potential bad things that could happen. I think it's just that other people aren't real,
and that is psychosis.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what we're talking about.
Other people are just objects to feed my needs.
Right.
That kind of thing.
I mean, that's a very psychopathic way of looking at the world.
Exactly right. That's
sociopath.
It's kind of hard not to
sociopath. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to see that in that guy.
I mean, and I understand this is something that we all tend to do at times. I mean, how many of us have never been to a restaurant and gotten bad service and not necessarily treated people badly because of it, but have not taken the time to understand why we could have gotten bad service that particular night. And, we rail about it or whatever. But your waitress may have just found out she just lost her mom or dad or grandfather.
1,000 reasons, because they are an a them. They are the other.
Well, yeah, and they're just not real.
Exactly.
They're there to serve us, literally.
Well, yeah, and that is it has its own sense of sociopathy.
Right. So the point is that we all have done something like that before,
Sure.
but we also recognize that those are isolated incidents.
Well, they don't represent a deep-seated tendency in ourselves,
right?
Which in Heaney's case was exactly that. You can't argue that away.
Of being treated poorly, so you treat poorly back. This was an incident of somebody again not satisfied with just being a good person. It's we must have the attention. Mm-hmm. You must look at us and see how wonderful we are.
And I'm also now in the same vein of trying not to, treat him that way. I can see where some of this gets rooted in our lives are so crappy, because I can't imagine they had a wonderful life. He's probably living in a trailer somewhere.
No, actually they were fairly affluent, if I recall correctly. They were, yes.
Kind of middle class, nice place.
Oh yeah, absolutely nice place.
See, there blows my theory.
He built the balloon, for God's sakes. And the dang old thing is probably as big as this room. It was like a weather side
industrious.
Yeah, absolutely, very much so. But which that's like Arnold. The reason that his traitorousness was so bad is because of what came before that.
Right,
Same
he was
thing
such
here.
a patriot. Because I was willing to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, thinking, my life is so bad, and the only thing he has as a way out is what he sees on reality TV.
No. It's definitely that.
It is. I'm looking for my 15 minutes.
It's never enough until I'm famous.
That's exactly
never enough.
Well, I think.
I want the big payday of being on reality TV.
But I think very few people are truly wired that way. I think what leads somebody. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily true for him, but I think in general, you are presented with a culture that says what is right and wrong that leads you to that.
Yeah, and I wonder myself how much of his brokenness is his own fault or that which led him to that. That is a very good question.
Well, it is the question. Yeah. It is the question of justice and mercy.
That's correct. That's it. Exactly right.
You can't have one. You cannot, in a functional society, have either all mercy or all justice. You have to balance the two.
Exactly right.
And the church is that way.
Yeah,
Obviously,
every case deserves. We ruled upon based on the criteria that has been agreed to by society.
Right. From a secular perspective, we probably tend more towards the justice side of that equation. From the church perspective, we tend more towards the mercy side.
That is very well put. That is exactly correct, because society sees it as a self-protection mode in many respects, especially when we're talking criminal acts.
Well, and the church sees it as medicinal, so it's an entirely different approach.
Exactly, that's correct.
Mercy is medicinal, justice is corrective.
That's right.
That's
whereas, as far as the society is concerned, it's really about neither. It's about protectiveness, and it's about vengeance.
Yes,
and that's and I'm not sure how civilized either of those. I understand protectiveness. I get that. Vengeance.
Protectiveness often is expressed as vengeance.
That's correct. That's right.
Yeah,
it's very dense.
Which is sad. Yeah, unfortunate.
The predatory should be separated.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, absolutely. We're not doubting that protection is a necessity.
Yeah. It's often just expressed in anger, which comes out as vengeance, which is again understandable. I get that. I'm not condemning that either. But wow, such a short quote, and we ran with that.
Yeah.
As we often do. Yes.
26 minutes so far.
Right. So you get 2 minutes and I get 2 minutes.
I want to surrender my time, as they would say on the floor of Congress.
Yes. Yeah, how do they say that?
I cede my time back to the speaker or something.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Parliamentary procedure. So I think that means we turn it over to Francis here.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going a little bit back in time for mine, actually. I'm going to Socrates, which...
just a little bit back in time.
A bit. Yeah.
Socrates.
Well, I really love it. I really love. Of course, it's all Plato.
Thank you, Bill.
But it really is really good. And you probably saw this as you all were researching as well. But here's the quotation: "The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be."
Ooh.
Let me read it again. The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be.
Because we see ourselves as more than what we possibly are.
Psychologically, they call that, this is what, and I will freely admit to this, when we did our evaluation for the diaconate, they tell you all the things that are wrong with you, and as he's going through this, you're thinking, oh my God, they're never going to let us in. Why don't you just tell me I'm out right now? Why do I have to sit here and endure you, going through all this? But they call it faking to the good.
Oh,
okay, and that's right. Is to because since we are writing the script of our own lives, essentially
to a large degree. Yes.
Yeah, we're writing the screenplay as we live it. Therefore, we are the heroes of our own story. We're casting ourselves as that, always. Even the villains.
Yes, nobody gets up thinking, I'm going to be evil today.
That's exactly right.
They think I'm going to save the world from itself.
Yeah.
That's right. Even Victor Von Doom.
Yes.
So we have...
Yes, Thanos thought he was saving the universe.
Well, that's what made him a good villain, as opposed to a ridiculous villain. So
yes.
But we have a tendency to, when we say pretend to be, we always paint ourselves bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter than we really are. So
more virtuous, more
virtuous. That's correct. And
we don't always. And the only reason I would say this, in our best moments, we do.
But over time.
Well, not even over time, because there are some people that do the exact opposite, that see themselves in the worst possible light, and they struggle with that image because either because they do think that they are better than that deep down, but they can't break free of what they see, or they've just been beat down by parents, husband, wife, circumstances.
So victimology would be
let's be careful using that, because sometimes victimology is a true thing. Sometimes you can be victimized.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Into the circumstances because you don't have any tools to respond to that victimization any other way.
Sure. Well, you may have no control either. I mean,
as far as being victimized, but as far as having the tools, that's how you respond to it, and that's always your choice. But sometimes you don't know that there's another way. So your choice is only within what you're know that is possible to do. But so I wouldn't say always, but because there are some people that a great number of people, mental health issues would take you down that road.
Well, I mean, there's a great quotation in the movie Wide Earp that I love that is given by Doc Holliday. He tells it to it's Dennis Quaid says it to Kevin Costner's Wide Earp. He says, "Wyatt, for some people, this old world is just never going to be right." And that's exactly what you're talking about here. Similar
to that quote about Johnny Ringo? Why does he hurt people? Because he's got a great big
hole inside of him. That's correct. There's something wrong with him.
You can never steal enough or kill enough to ever fill it.
That's exactly right. But those are, by definition, aberrations.
I think that implies that they don't happen as often as they do. I think the aberrations are far more common than
that's right.
than they ought to be, obviously.
Well, there's that ought word that we're talking about here, and you're absolutely right that we don't always pretend to be what we aren't.
I think of it this way. This is the quote that I thought of when you read yours.
Yeah.
Be the person your dog thinks you are.
I've heard that a lot lately.
Yeah. Okay.
Because your dog thinks you're the greatest thing in the world.
And that's
what
Socrates is saying. Is that if you want to be honorable, be that which you're pretending to be. To be this perfect hero for whatever reason. Now, not to say that everybody pretends to do that, as you say, but isn't that what we would want, even if we can't?
Well, and I think that extreme cases aside, I think even those that see themselves in such a negative light, because because they're broken or they think they're broken,
they've been conditioned
to, they wish it weren't so.
Sure,
and that's maybe the part that the pretend, but they don't. They are not even able to pretend.
That's right. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, but it should be. The way he
should
says
be,
the way he that's the intention of the way that is.
Yeah, maybe pretend is again, not to correct somebody as great as Socrates.
Yeah.
But maybe the quote should be not who we pretend to be, but who we know we ought to be, or could be,
or wish to be,
Mm-hmm. Because that's the thing. I don't think all of us pretend. I think a lot of us do pretend.
And his choice of word says something about his outlook.
Yes,
I mean, everybody's a fake.
That's exactly right. That's what he's saying.
He's saying he sees everyone as a fraud.
I took that differently.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because we went with the modern scientific approach of
no. I mean, what you just said about saying something about him, I took that as pretend to be, as in more of pretend, as in be the person who you could be in more of a motivational way.
Mm-hmm. But he's coming at it from a very, it sounds like, from a very
without the context of the text around it.
That's correct. I mean, we just have the quotations.
See, that could be your context. That
very much so. That's right. It is logical, but then again, yours is not illogical.
So yeah, I mean, you could go either way.
That's right.
I think So that's a really good quote.
I thought so too. I really like that, and I think there's a lot to what he's saying there. I mean, again, he's
as usual. He's very prescient. It's very pregnant. There's a lot of stuff that he's
more
laying out there.
He's calling out his fellow humans for being frauds.
Yeah,
to a degree,
exactly. Saying that there is no honor by being that, by pretending when you are not.
Be honorable. If you want to be honorable, stop pretending, but be the person you've been pretending to be.
That's right.
Be genuine.
And I think you can even take it as
genuine, though. Go ahead.
Well, I think you can even take it because I think you guys are taking it as he's saying it as a slam, and to take that from the motivational side, it could be, look, you're better than you think you are.
Yeah.
Be that.
Right.
You don't have to pretend. You can make yourself, because again, we're thinking about the Greeks. In this period of time. We're not quite to the Stoics of Marcus Aurelius. The real Marcus Aurelius, not the one we just had here last episode. But you're in a time where this sort of humanistic bettering is is certainly
it's in its ascendancy. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because the philosophy these are the heights of philosophy. Whereas it is question about the love of wisdom and the bettering of the human person.
right.
And that's kind of, and Socrates was famous for that, but he also suffered no fools.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, that's why I'm kind of read it the way I'm reading it, is like, well, he's smacking.
Well, you can say that and suffer no fools at the same time. They're
Well,
not
that's-
mutually
yeah.
exclusive.
Which, of course, is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It can be taken every which way.
Yeah. You used a great word there, humanistic. that's yeah. I mean, that's the core of it. Is a humanistic outlook about others rather than a deterministic or utilitarian outlook about others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very much
it's
so.
humanist in the way that Francis uses it in his
Yeah.
description.
That's right.
Yeah.
As in Thomas More's humanism, Erasmus's humanism.
Which is all tied back to...
Which is all, yeah, it's got those Greek roots. That's where it comes from.
Back to-
Yeah, it's very Aristotelian in many ways. where-
Aquinas would love this.
Oh, absolutely. That's right. It's
I
all-
say that with great hubris because, to think that we could come up with anything that Thomas Aquinas would love is a bit of a...
Well,
Yeah, kind of the height of,
he's another one of those guys you'd love to sit and have a beer with.
yeah.
And Moore would be the same way too, because he would be the life of the party because he was just joke after joke after joke. That's just what we know of him.
Which is funny because, the only experience that modern people are going to have of somebody like Moore is going to be if they've seen the old movie or the play or whatever. But, because that's somebody bringing it to life. He was very much a dour kind of man in that. So it's kind of hard. It's still kind of hard to think
He
of
was
him that
always
way.
under the shadow in that play. Basically, his death at the end foreshadows the entire everything, and that's to do a disservice to him because it's not that it's untrue. It's just compressed within a 2-hour period. Whereas if you read his writings, which are enormous, you get a much better picture of the man, flaws and all too.
Yeah.
Because he was a product of his time, and sometimes that's not a good thing.
My current pastor is a huge, not hater, but he is a huge non-fan of Moore and John Fisher.
Really? Oh my goodness!
Which is ironic considering one of our two parishes is St. Thomas More.
Ouch! I'll have to be careful what I say around him then.
Well, because their approaches to non-Catholics before Henry went crazy was very stern.
It was.
And very brutal.
It was. Well, at that time, that
but it would have been normal.
Well, it's correct. It was seen as sedition,
right.
And it was seen as an attempt to overthrow the legitimate authority, which in this case, church and state were linked together. That's why that's
why Henry was able to get away with what he did.
Yeah,
correct.
And
there's
authority stems from his relationship to the church.
Well, yeah, at the beginning,
At this time.
at that point, it does.
Yeah.
But
later, becomes the church's authority stems from its relationship with Henry.
Yeah, with him.
Well, that's right, and which is, of course,
the point of flipping it all over.
The point of flipping it all around. But it goes back to that great line from Pulp Fiction. We're going to get medieval on your ass. There's a reason that statement resonates us, and it's still a quotation that we think of today. It was one of those standout pull quotes from that movie, is because that's exactly. Man for All Seasons, the play speaks of it. It says we're dealing with an age less fastidious than we live in now. That was, they were brutes. They were in those ways that society was very uncivilized,
unforgiving.
No, both.
Yeah,
both.
Yeah. Well, it's unforgiving led it to being.
Yeah,
very
exactly. Very much so. So that's I think
conformity was everything.
Well, it's right, because if not, you would be killed. And that is the society in which they lived, and therefore not the individual sin. It's a corporate sin that they all have, an original sin, if you will, of that time. But we've gone a little far afield.
Well, not necessarily. Although I'm not a huge fan of the concept of corporate sin, but mainly because it's generally ascribed to not. And I'm going to use the word individual here in a very incorrect way, but I can't think of another way to phrase this. But it's usually used in individual instances.
Yeah,
and maybe that's redundant, but in instances of times when lots of people do the same or similar things. Like we would ascribe corporate sin to the people of Germany of the 1940s.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Well, to the south,
that's another one. Yes, the south of
which and I don't like the term because you're right. Because we as Catholics just define sin very narrowly and very specifically, and that definition does not support the way it's being used in the term corporate sin.
Yeah,
corporate evil. See, we just don't have a good term for that. It gets bandied about a lot.
How do you come up with a decent clinical phrase for a whole bunch of people damn lost their mind?
Well, that's correct, and
because that's what we're talking about,
and that we're trying to describe something that is unfathomable in many ways, and yet was very real.
There is a collective guilt to it.
Well, that's.
But you're right. It's
a collective guilt, but when you dig down, it's a collective of individuals. Guilt in their own particular way.
Well, a critical mass of individuals at that time believed erroneously, and I'm being kind,
or were not brave enough to stand up, because sometimes sin is not being brave enough to stand up to what's wrong.
Sometimes, but in certain times and eras and places, that's not really. It depends on where you're at on the continuum when that eventually reaches a tipping point, because it does. Because eventually, by the time the abolitionist movement comes along, there is a voice out there for this movement.
You could argue at the time of the Civil War, certainly with the things that have gone on in Europe, with we talked about in the last episode with Wilberforce ending the slave trade and all of that we had reached that tipping point. So that anybody who was still pro-slavery had reached the point of you are sinning because you are not standing up to what you should know is wrong.
In other words, history has turned, and you're now on the wrong side.
Yes,
and I think that's what you're talking about here.
With Hitler and the extermination of the 13 million, the 6 million Jews, and the 7 million of the rest of them. That how could you not know that rounding people up, and killing them is wrong?
There's a brokenness to that collective guilt.
Yeah,
their human spirit had to be broken first.
There's a lot to that, yes.
And then
you're right. As far as the majority,
there's a reason.
Broken, not as in I will torture it out of you to break you. It is and I don't even like the word weakness, but it is a.
Well, they've been worn down to accept it in many cases.
Right. There's a moral piece that is missing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to express something that we really
so
don't do well.
Inured to the hatred that it became the natural state for the younger people.
Well, they were conditioned then.
Conditioned.
That's a very good word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can be conditioned into a broken state.
Correct. And
and that's essentially what happened in Germany.
Well, Southern society up to the Civil War had conditioned itself to, even those who did not own slaves all believed it was the right thing to do, and they
or at least permissible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And for some, it was right because they based it on religious reasons in many cases.
Well, that's correct. Well,
horribly,
we have because for every objection, somebody with power and authority comes up with a logical workaround. Well, they're not truly human. They're 2/3 of a human. That's right.
See, that's
so
the key.
He who controls information controls the world. We know that.
Yeah.
It goes back to that inherent dignity. It goes back to that relationship honors about what happens with how you treat other people.
That's right. That continual. Right. You can condition us as a species to disregard that, and that is some scary stuff.
Yeah, you can
because those are two examples right there in our collective memory in the last 4 generations. When we did that, and we saw the results, the millions in bondage, the millions that were exterminated, because somebody or many somebodies were able to impose their will upon the majority.
They imposed their brokenness on the rest of us.
Well, I would argue that any imposing of one person's will upon another, whether that's a brokenness or not, is dishonorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To a degree, I mean, there are degrees of this. Don't get me wrong. This is not a black and white either or kind of a situation. Because even if I am truly honorable, there's only so far that I can go with trying to persuade you before I stop being honorable.
And then I must impose my will. Well,
Yeah.
Bonaparte was famous for that. I mean, he in the end, he talked about the only thing that mattered was his will.
Yes.
Because I will save France. And that's megalomania, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I am the state, King Henry the 14th, or 14th. Louis the 14th.
Louis.
Sorry,
Louis
we're talking about Henry. I meant Louis the 14th. Yes, I am the state.
That's right.
Would you just
his was a little bit broader than that, though. His was more of which we have talked to death on that about how.
But in practical terms,
was,
he was right.
He was, but that was there. That was he's also making comment on that. This is our system of government.
Right. But it's an expression of how that imposing of one's will for what you believe is the betterment of others.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's divine right.
It has gone too far.
Yeah,
but they would not have recognized it as such then, because that's the way the world worked.
Right, yeah. They would have seen it was a good thing, and many of them did, because he takes care of us. God appointed him to be our God on earth. That was how they used that.
He was the Sun King.
That's correct. That's right.
This leads me to ponder. Every generation has a set of beliefs, right? Okay. That are the relative underpinnings of society. And I'm very generalized speaking here in a very generalized way.
Continue.
Almost every generation has a following generation that comes along that tries to upset the apple cart.
Redefine it. Change it.
For whatever reason.
Kick it out.
Whether they
adapt it. Whatever.
Whether they want to roll back excesses or
Possibly.
whether or not they want to go beyond into what the prior generation would call excesses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Each generation has to reinvent the philosophy of their own selves.
So,
in relation to what went before.
Right. So, who is the more honorable? Those that are trying to upend the apple cart, or those who are trying to hang on to the apple cart? So, what comes to mind is a lot of the strife we see today between older generations. It's what I would call Gen X and Boomers. Yeah. Although I hate to be associated with Boomers in any way. I only do so mainly because they're older than us. And there is a generational gap.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
And with the millennials and the Gen Z on the other side, and how the millennials and the Gen Z are trying to redefine certain aspects of morality and what is right and wrong.
Correct.
Now, our generation did the same thing.
Don't you question the science.
That's right. Don't you question the science.
There are 37 genders. That's science.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was 57.
I thought it was 37.
Who knows? I've never seen a list of names for the genders, though, of those 37 genders.
I've never seen the list, yeah.
But still, though, when our generation came along and we were coming of age in the 1980s, we pushed back against the excesses of our older brothers and sisters. Now, granted, you don't have older brothers and sisters, but I do.
Well, I mean,
they are boomers.
Aunts and uncles, yeah.
And our aunts and uncles and our parents that were the flower children and the druggy generation of the 60s and 70s. And what we did was instead of pushing that farther out, we pulled back.
We became more traditionalist.
Yes,
and that's common. There's a statement, and I wish I could give you the exact quotation, but it's basically like every son is destined to embrace the ideals of his grandfather because they are in opposition to that of his
parents,
father.
Yes. So I call it the boomerang effect.
Yeah, and it's been talked about quite a bit, and there's a lot because. And there's a pendulum that goes. Boomerang's a very good example too, because you go from an authoritarian generation to a far more liberal small L generation, and then back.
I would call it less authoritarian, but again, this is just my perspective.
Yeah,
and how I view things, and I recognize that not everybody will view it that way, as not so much authoritarian, because to me that implies punishment.
Right? Yeah, that's not the best.
I would call it order,
establishment.
Well, I just call it order and chaos.
Oh, so we're gonna go Vorlon and Shadows here.
If you want to go that
right.
respect, yeah.
But in other words, for each generation that is
Warlock and the Magus, if you want to go really old school with Jim Starlin.
Yeah, that is very that is very much the generation that is Order is doomed or fated to produce a generation that is reactive and therefore more into chaos, and then the pendulum swings back and forth throughout eternity.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think that's because you look at the excesses of the 1920s.
Yeah.
Look at what that produced into the 30s
and during the Depression.
In the Depression, well, and look at since we were talking about Nazi Germany. Look at what happened in Nazi Germany in the 20s with the chaos. In the 20s here in America were very much a chaotic time as well. Even though we considered it good times,
it was prosperous
chaotic.
for us. They were
yes,
not for them. But you're right. There was a
and then the 30s with the let's look to law and order and rules and the government to put together all these programs to save us. And you could use that description for both Nazi Germany and the United States.
You could,
because both use the same tools to different effects.
And yet they were both products of a generation that was essentially lost.
Yes.
To use the Hemingway term, that they had been through World War I and seen this enormous upending of everything that went before because of that war. So, which leads me to the question of, are we victims of our circumstances? Or is this inherent no matter what? Because you can look in all those cases, the Depression, World War I, World War II, and the 50s and the 60s, and each decade has its own unique milieu. To use that word.
Has its own character.
Correct. That
it's distinctive for certain things.
Is that where's the chicken? Where's the egg? Are the times in society what creates the philosophy and understanding, or is the philosophy and understanding that creates the times?
It's both. It's both and.
Yeah, there's
it's good Catholic answers. It's both and.
That's right. That's right.
And column A, little column B.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, and then next time it's a little column B, and then a little column A.
Yeah.
It's both cyclical and linear, because it's linear in that it never ends.
That's right.
You never truly get around back to where you started.
Oh, yeah.
Until you have destroyed the civilization and you have to start over completely.
Yeah.
So because there is from the Roman Republic to where we are today, it is linear, but it is also a linear expression of cycles, to where those civilizations grew and collapsed, and then something replaced it, and then grew and collapsed, and something replaced it, and so on.
History's a corkscrew.
Oh, perfect.
It's the double helix.
Yeah, exactly. That was what the first thing I thought of when you said that was it is a double helix. Yes.
Well, like it said in Battlestar Galactica, all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again.
Yes.
That's a rephrasing of that very thing. That human nature is such, we are condemned to follow this endless cycle forward into time until we are no more.
I wouldn't necessarily call it condemned.
Well, I'm using that word, but
I look at it as this way.
But if we have no choice over that, then why?
So there is a limitation, a hard stop to where humanity can go. We're not going to be able to break the cycle. We're fated, even no matter how far along we get.
Into infinity, essentially.
Yeah, we're eventually going to cataclysm ourselves back around into a circle
and just destroy it.
And there's a hard stop, and
we're never
going to break out of the course.
So you're suggesting that inevitably we will create our own KT event, reset the biological clock, and evolution starts all over again.
Boundary where the iridium is in the geological layer, is that the
that's the KT event is 66 million years ago when
right.
the asteroid
exactly.
hit. Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's where 90
only geeks would know
that's
that.
right.
Well, but if you say
90+% of all the species on the planet went extinct.
Yeah.
Based on that. And yet we and civilization arose from that as then all of a sudden primates were able to have what
there,
they took.
There was a limitation
we were
to
able
where
to
the
rise.
dinosaurs can go, so they had to go to be taken over by mammals.
Well, that implies that the meteor that hit was I'm not saying it wasn't, was either divinely or
there was
destined, for lack of a better
an
word.
intelligent design behind
However
the
you
meteor.
wish to put it, yes.
But I just
there could have been an alien, that was fired that at the Earth because it was sitting in the way of his view.
Yes.
And, Marvin the Martian could have decided, you gotta go.
You gotta go. Dinosaurs.
But I think that it's less of a thing that is... to me, that's a very negative way of putting it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's...
to me, it's part of our broken nature in the sense that it's part of that aspiring to be the ideal. And unfortunately, that ideal is always in flux from generation to generation, society to society, for the most part. And maybe that's because there isn't enough of a faith aspect to those things.
Right. We have a hard time breaking out of our nature.
Yes, that's my main point. We're not going to break out of our nature. You say Battlestar Galactica, this has all happened before, it will all happen again. That means that no matter how much we implore ourselves to stop pretending, there's a limit to
we cannot stop. Our fallen nature, to use the word, is inescapable.
And therefore, there is no
ultimate redemption.
Salvation.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
There's no salvation in ourselves.
That is correct.
But yes, there is no salvation that comes from us.
Oh no, the heathen just went Catholic on your ass.
That's exactly right. Well,
you've been hanging out with us for a long time.
Our fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. And that is exactly what he's talking about. And that's what we're talking about.
And I always say humans are not perfectible creatures.
That is correct.
But that seems to be this pervasive part of our milieu today is, if we were just better, if we just did this, and if you don't move forward with me, you're some kind of troglodyte hater. It's like, yes, that's wonderful. We should move forward, but there are limits.
Well,
there's a hard stop. We can't.
I think the hard stop, if I understand the one that you're describing, is the end of the fall of the civilization. I like to view it as this, in that even though I'm the one who described that corkscrew that you so aptly gave the visage for, it's cyclical, and for the most part, I think it has been cyclical towards the positive throughout human history.
Yeah, that's correct. Because if you look at it over time,
do advance.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
and not just technology. When I say positive, I don't mean technological. I mean an understanding of people in our relationship to one another.
That's right. Human nature.
Yes. We are better at, again, not to pummel the expired equine.
Right.
We are better at the inherent dignity of the human person thing than we have ever been before.
Yes. Like, this moment is the most wonderful moment in history. But there's no salvation in ourselves.
And the thing that causes this cycle is this, I think. And I don't know how much this has to do with honor.
Well, because we implore ourselves to stop pretending.
But I think the thing that is the issue is that, and this is where I see especially where we are today, is that, because we grow up in a certain set of conditions, that seems to be the norm. And because it's all we've ever known, we think that's all that's ever been.
Yeah.
That's how we think when we're young. That's how we thought when we were young.
Yeah.
I know it is. And so when we rebel against that, again, we go back to what we unthinkingly realize is what our grandparents thought, and try to make things better. We're not often fixing things, because often we do it out of context. We try and fix things, but because we don't often respect what has gone before, that's where the spiral down to a collapse happens for us to then start the whole thing over again. But I think it comes out of an honest attempt to fix what we see as broken. We saw stuff that we thought was broken, and we tried to fix it. And we ended up building a next generation of kids that, and not us three specifically, because none of us would have ever handed out participation trophies to our kids. We talked about that in an earlier show prep. But we ended up creating a generation that, because of our experiences, where we were pretty much left to our own devices, we kind of became helicopter parents as a generation.
Yeah.
You know, the tail end of the baby boomers and the early Gen Xers. We became the helicopter parents that created...
We wanted to fill the voids.
Yes.
That were part of our early lives.
Which we didn't even realize existed.
We didn't realize...
Because we didn't.
We didn't realize it was a void, but we wanted to do better.
Right, we wanted to do better, and we didn't realize we were trying to do better in a way that was not... And every generation does this, I think.
Yeah.
Like the parents of the 60s and early 70s when they, we're not going to set any boundaries for our kids. Well, but that's what the kids want.
Yeah, that's what they need.
And so, they
how
try to
are they going to learn safety?
Yeah. Right.
Without healthy boundaries.
Respect for others without boundaries.
Exactly. Right. So now we've gone to the point where, this generation that we created has become the millennials and the Gen Zs, where for some reason a safe space is an integral part of their makeup, to where they think they need to be protected from ideas that they don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And that words are the same as physical violence.
Microaggressions.
This whole idea of microaggressions. My God. Our entire childhood was not microaggressions, macroaggressions. That was how we
managed to get by.
We managed to get by.
We'll be all right.
We never rode a bike with a helmet or knee pads or anything like that. That's still...
And we just never viewed words as anything more than...
ideas.
Yes, that's an insult or whatever, But we live by sticks and stones could break our bones, but words will never hurt us.
Well, yeah, but we did get pissed off and angry and hurt.
Yeah,
but we got over it.
You can get over it. You don't view words as something that then requires retaliation.
Legislative retaliation in particular, corporate retaliation.
Or violent retaliation.
Or violent retaliation. And it's not to say that kind of stuff didn't happen, because, there's plenty of violence and plenty of backlash always against any particular... Because it just depends on which group is in ascendancy at any particular time and place. Because authoritarians, for lack of a better term, even though I prefer... Or say that the avatars of order might be in ascendancy over here, but at the same time, the avatars of chaos might be in ascendancy over here, and just 10 miles away.
Yeah,
so
we have to get to our bourbon.
Yeah,
break.
we do. So let's do the bourbon break. I know Martin's over here going, holding up the
We're at the hour mark without even Robert getting a chance to do
I know. I haven't even summed anything up yet.
So you get 5 minutes.
So I get 5 minutes. Yeah. So that's my job.
But you've done a wonderful job so far with working these two together. So I don't think it'll be.
Well, trying. Well, to me, this is a fact. I didn't intend this to be such a deep...
We went super crazy with quotes we picked 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. But again, we talk about Gen X as the greatest generation. Because, obviously, it's us. So, of course, we're going to think... Because everybody thinks their generation is the greatest generation. But this is what I think is the hallmark of our generation. And maybe it's just our slice of our generation. Certainly not everybody in our generation could do this. Is the ability to explore ideas and to do it dispassionately in the sense that we can examine it from all sides, yet passionately in the sense that we can see what is both good and bad and what is right and wrong, and try and work something out that is usable.
We've been through so much. There's a resilience that we understand.
Yeah.
That means... okay, we can kick an idea around without disaster.
Right. And I can't say for sure that I can point to any particular moment in our growing up, in our makeup, even in our time at Bellarmine.
It was everything. I mean,
it's it just created a perfect storm of circumstances that created us.
You're 8 years old, and both Vietnam and Watergate are on TV.
Yeah, not only that.
I mean, for people who are young, Watergate was a cataclysm.
It was.
Yes.
at the time.
Well, for me, the biggest cataclysm was that it preempted my damn Saturday morning cartoons.
But we sat there while the government ripped itself apart.
Yeah.
And then Vietnam's on there, and then boom, we grow up, and something we always had so much faith in the space program, in science and all that, explodes. 30 seconds after
literally
launch,
in our faces.
our faces, and it's just shock after shock after shock, all the way, up through
9/11.
9/11.
But you know what? What I find interesting about because all what you're saying is absolutely true. At least for myself, and maybe it's just because of the stuff that I was interested in, I always saw the future as full of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I had my own issues growing up, big believer and reader of sci-fi and all of that. Star Trek was obviously very incredibly formative for this guy over here.
Well, that's correct. Well, I mean, my
essential
positivity
sure.
was formed with that.
Yes, your essential optimism about life is very Roddenberryan.
Yeah.
Right, because we saw that the future could be so great.
I think it's good. Yeah.
What was that?
Roddenberryan.
Yeah.
Roddenberry? Oh, that's good.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
it's kind of the rejection of what you said earlier, that mankind is not perfectible. Roddenberryisms would say that is not true. We are.
But you know what? But oddly enough,
or enough to matter. Let's just
right. The way he viewed it though was I think he really thought that the people were perfectible in that sense because I think our reaction to especially the Neutral Zone, which was the last episode of season 1 of the Next Generation.
Yep.
It was just so in your face. We reject everything that what we saw was good in our society.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It was not that money is good, but that it's a tool that can be used for good.
Yeah, and it took away these essential underpinnings, but it didn't put anything back in its place.
Exactly, that's the thing.
That's right. It was like, well, we're going to burn the outhouse down without installing plumbing, to use that favorite quote of yours.
Yes.
Because they didn't talk about the plumbing that supposedly, other than it was great, but they didn't.
How
go
do you
for
better
it.
yourself?
Yeah, exactly. It made no sense.
How is you, being captain of this starship, going out and poking your nose where it doesn't belong in other people's business,
essentially
bettering yourself? How is the guy who had to spend 16 hours a day building this death trap, because the thing's always on the verge of exploding, how is that bettering himself? So there was...
Yeah, I
don't see the guy who swept up after shift at what is it called, Utopia Planitia. That's not. He's not better. You're not, unless you pay. No one's going to do that.
Right. What does he get out of that? Because that's part and parcel of.
I mean, you got to unclog the toilet sometime.
Well, he's trying to say we've evolved beyond that. They've said that several times. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Maybe it
is, but it's not in the finite.
But who decides that? You know what? I'm gonna be the best damn janitor there ever was.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, but in a society where all wants and needs are taken care of, everybody should be an intellectual. Seems to be the presumption.
Yeah.
That's not
a
possible.
Scientist. Yeah, because we're not all. We're just simply not all
wired that way.
We're not all capable of that.
There's a faulty presumption at the core of
not necessarily scientists, but artists.
That's right.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think they tend more to those, the artsy fartsy kind of a thing. But the artsy fartsy guy is not building that starship.
That's correct. And to say that there is a uniformity of humanity,
a uniformity of human desire,
and capabilities,
and capability.
That's the huge.
That is actually, in many respects, it's a sin against the sanctity of diversity.
Yeah.
Because they're saying because of our diversity we are strong, but yet this economic system.
But where's the diversity?
That's right. It's not that everybody is thinking the same way, which goes back.
Yeah, Roddenberryism essentially assumes that there's no such thing as a blue collar person anymore.
That's right.
Somebody who just wants to do a job, do it well, go home and have a beer.
That's
Right.
correct.
Because there's
Those
wrong
were
with
those were the benighted in that utopian.
Yeah, it's like that doesn't exist anymore.
But
We're
there is
all-
great
but
honor
it's
in
silly.
being that guy.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
correct.
It
And
is
that's
Because
why
you know what?
super
If I
silly.
need my toilet unclogged, to use your example, I really need that guy. You know?
That's right. You need the Creasel brothers to come and fix your toilet.
Yeah,
Somebody's
you know,
got to do that.
At least Mario and Luigi, I don't know. You know, somebody's got to come and do. You know, if I got shit coming out of the shitter in the wrong direction, I want that stuff fixed.
Shitter's full.
Yeah, shitter's full.
That's what you want.
And
Merry
it's
Christmas.
So,
Merry Christmas. Shitter's
and there's
full.
honor in that. You know, and
Yes, sorry. Because Tommy Creasel drives a bigger Mercedes than Niles Crane does.
well, so
All right.
anyways, we can
It's
keep
awesome.
going on
It's
that.
awesome.
All right, so
Again,
let's do our bourbon break.
we're
Yeah.
70 minutes without even letting Robert do his quote. So let's do it, brother.
All right, so bourbon break first. So we are doing our second new bourbon of the day, which for us is, we do all of our episodes in one day. And this is, I picked both of these up yesterday at Kroger's. This was normally, I think, like a $45 bottle. I got it for $36. It's Wilderness Trail Bourbon. And it's bottled in bond, which, we're seeing that more and more, I've
That's
noticed.
a plus, absolutely.
Because used to be that was mainly on the low end bottles. That was one of the
It was like
they tried to make it a selling point for a cheap bourbon, which, to be honest, at one time that was a big deal. But bottled and bond seems to be a bigger thing lately. I've seen a lot of things I would consider higher end. It's a very wheated bourbon. It's very sweet.
Yeah. So this is Wilderness Trail Small Batch. Like I said, bottled and bond, so it makes it 100 proof.
Good color, good rich.
Kind of sweet and creamy.
Mm-hmm.
Creamy,
that's a good way to put it.
I
Yeah.
saw it online compared to creme brulee. So it has sort of that cooked sugar sweetness to it, and then a little creamy underneath, and
got a long
nice.
finish is the way you put it earlier.
Yeah.
It's some bourbons are a momentary experience. Doesn't make them bad by any stretch. So like the Elijah Craig that I've become very fond of, there's what I call that explosion of flavor in the mouth, but there's not a whole lot after that that really hangs around. There's always a little bit more than that, but it doesn't really hang around for a long time. This, you get a long-term, several-minute experience where it goes from your mouth into your stomach, and it really produces a warmth.
Yes, agreed. completely.
But it's not a burn. It's not harsh. It's very mellow. This is one of my new favorites. This is a great bourbon.
The reviews online kind of say, well, it's still a little young yet. They still need to work on it just a touch, kind of mellow it out, just to refine the flavors just a bit.
Maybe. Honestly, I think I think it's pretty mellow as it is, but I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. I found it mellow, creamy, sweet. Not
as sweet as the Long Branch. I think that we had at
Maverick's Place.
At Maverick's Place, which we look forward to having next month. Right? Is it next month, or is it next month at your place? Next month is at your place.
I believe if we would like to, we might be able to.
I was talking about doing Boo. That's right.
Yes, we were talking about doing Boo. I have to get in touch with a professor and see about. Of course, it has to be after graduation.
Right.
So 13th is graduation.
Right. Well, Mother's Day, graduation, all that. I mean, that's just... And Derby's the week before. Yeah, there's no way we can do anything before the third or fourth week.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, we may do there and substitute that for my turn. But I have two new bourbons to try. I do have Long Branch. That
Right,
we haven't done on the show. Yeah, we haven't done it on the show.
Yeah.
And I've got my... one I've been wanting to try, the Old Forester Statesman.
Yes.
It's the most expensive bourbon I've ever purchased for use on the show.
Ooh, how much was it?
$52.
Oh.
So that's getting up there.
Really? Then you must have gotten your Michter's on sale, because I've seen that in the $50 range.
Yeah, I got the Michter's at $42.
Oh, wow, that's a good price.
It was really good. It was a really good price,
Yeah.
So before we go on, though, one shout-out quickly to... We just came from lunch.
Yes, from B.A. Colonial.
B.A. Colonial, which we learned stands for Badass.
Yes.
Badass Colonial, a little place there on what used to be called Colonial Gardens.
Yes,
An
which is a great name considering we're doing the Revolutionary War theme.
Yeah.
This year for the history episodes.
But we enjoyed our lunch there with Marcus Aurelius very, very much. And,
good food.
Very much thanks to Robert for the suggestion and covering the bill.
Well, we always we try to each of us provide a meal. Mm-hmm. And while this is a little bit more than, we might normally do on a per episode basis, I've done some where I've just cooked up a big pot of chili. So that's, dollar-wise, it evens out eventually.
Yeah.
So,
but it was so good.
It was.
So
very
good.
tasty.
You guys had burgers that you really enjoyed.
Very much so.
Yes, we had the black and blue burgers.
Yeah,
yes. And I had a chicken sandwich, and I thought it was amazing. Just fantastic.
A fried chicken sandwich.
Yeah, basically, the thing everybody wants right now is the chicken sandwich, the Southern-style chicken sandwich. It was terrific. Hot in the inside, just right out of the basket, seemed like.
Yeah.
And just wonderfully seasoned. The great breading, so it's tremendous flavor.
Yeah, it's kitty corner to where Biscuit Valley used to be.
Yep.
Biscuit Valley still does exist in Louisville, just not in this end of town.
Yeah. So our hearts mourn for Biscuit Valley at Colonial Gardens.
Amen.
So yes,
nice
shout
out,
really nice
BA.
place.
It was, that was really good and very good service. And the young lady really appreciated hearing that everything was terrific.
She was very sweet. She was very bubbly without being intrusive. I appreciate that.
It's perfection. Yeah. True perfection.
Yeah, she did a good job. So we appreciate that a bunch.
Yep.
I don't remember her name, or we would mention.
I don't. She probably said it. I'm horrible with names.
Aaron or something like that.
Is that okay?
Something like that.
I mean, it's really horrible of me to admit, but like 90% of my parishioners, I'll know their faces, but I couldn't tell you what their names are. That's because I'm so bad with names.
I'm bad with names.
So it's just a common thing. Some of us, some are great, and some less so.
I mean, things and people I know and should know. I will sit and sometimes and forever try and figure out, damn, what's the name? I can't remember. So not only are my knees shot and do I need to go to the orthopedist to see about getting my knees replaced eventually, I'm sure. Now I got to worry about dementia because I can't remember crap.
Well, at least you can remember your quote.
Quote for what?
Surely he has one. Yes,
actually I had several.
We belabored this point for so very long, and we're running.
I had a Ronald Reagan quote that I was going to do. But since we went more philosophical than specific to the revolution, because this was about democracy. I like it because I just think it's one to remember. So I'm going to give it, and then I'm going to talk about something else. Democracy is worth dying for because it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. So, great quote by the great Ronaldus Magnus. Now, the quote that I'm actually going to use to help tie everything together is by George Bernard Shaw.
Okay.
That hack.
Yeah.
The most tragic thing in the world is a man of genius who is not a man of honor.
Oh man, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
So
because you could use the genius for something really bad.
Well, Hitler's an obvious example.
Well, I was going to go your other standby.
Yeah.
Dr. Doom.
Oh, very good. That's true. That's right.
Because the genius who is not a man of honor, especially the tragic one, almost always thinks he is.
Sure.
So, to harken back to our prior episode, Arnold and Tarleton both probably would have considered themselves men of honor. Because they had a cause they were fighting for. And I would bet that Arnold thought he was honorable on both sides of that cause. He was honorable because he was reacting or responding to the slights that he was given. Because he was treated dishonorably in his mind, he thought that the honorable thing to do would be to go to the other side. And also to recoup his losses in
the profitable thing to do.
Yeah, and the profitable thing. And often the horribleness of that tragicness that Shaw says is linking that monetary with that pride. And I think that's very... Oh, what we forgot to do is give your guys quotes. Again,
you want to give them?
Yeah, because we need to reset the table for me to hammer things home.
All right. Calvin Coolidge. No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave.
Yes, love it.
Selflessness.
Received, not gave. Or given, not... Gave, not received. Gave, not got. I'm going to put it that way.
Yeah.
So, Francis.
The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. That's Socrates.
Right. So, I mean, we spent, an hour and 15 minutes? Give or take? About an hour on those two, dissecting them. And they both contain aspects of this whole idea that, to be a genius. Because we're talking about guys in instances where genius is a part of it, I think. Because, I mean, there's almost always going to be genius in the things we talk about, the circumstances we bring up from history, because those are the things that will last. So maybe that's kind of an excuse to say, well, it's real easy to come up with those. Well, yeah, because they last. But it is easy to see the tragedy in those examples that we talk about where we don't act honorably, because we see the harm that comes from not acting honorably. And when we think about all the cases in history where somebody does not act honorably, very rarely is there not going to be serious harm to one another. Especially when you get, the higher up you get in any kind of a hierarchy, the less honorable you are, the more harm you do, because you can affect more people. The more honorable you are, the more good you can do, because you can affect more people. And to use a doom as an example, maybe it's easier to use a doom as an example because we can see, for whatever reason, Dr. Doom is just more easily relatable than and this is a good thing, than a Hitler,
sure,
or
absolutely.
a Stalin, or a Mao, or whoever, or Jefferson Davis,
okay,
or George III,
right?
Anybody you want to see that's on the what we consider the losing side of history. Well, it's hard to say when you're a king and you remain king that you're on the losing side of history, but he did lose an entire continent. So yes, when you're on that losing side, and it's easy to see how you have been the other side is easy to see how you've been dishonorable, because we see our grievances, and we see the tragedy that could have been. To look at it from a British perspective, what could have been if they had created nobles in the colonies?
Well, yeah, but we already said then the whole place would be Canada, and you know what kind of weather they have.
Yeah.
True. But being from Michigan, it's like, so that's just normal. I mean, Granted, Michigan doesn't have weather as bad as, Alberta, but still.
So your quote here has led me to a question.
Oh, excellent. Questions are great.
So, again, we were given the Roddenberry pinata some swings here.
Yeah.
And I took a couple of disses at Roddenberryism. So, the Ferengi are generally portrayed as dishonorable because they're not inspired by human betterment like the Federation.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Yet, their profit motive led them to usually act honorably. Because
can you give an example?
The rules
because
of
I can
acquisition prescribe how economic activity is supposed to happen.
But you know
within the Ferengi society, those who broke the rules of acquisition in order to be profitable were usually punished.
It certainly didn't succeed. Yeah.
In their particular circumstances, yes, but I would argue that they were not. They were the Ferengi, even in DS9, with the wonderful characters of Quark and Rom and Nog.
Yes.
And the Grand Nagus.
That's right.
They were not presented as anything to look up to. Yeah. Because they always embodied the worst of robber baron capitalism.
Right, and that's when they were first introduced. That's exactly the words that Data used.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The worst aspect.
I had forgotten that.
That's
yes.
right. They tended to because Riker says, "What do you?" Because they said they were traders, traders, and Riker says, "Does that mean they're not unlike us?" He goes, "No, this refers to the worst qualities of capitalism." Which was Roddenberry's intent, by the way.
Yes, it was his intent.
He wanted to slam capitalism up against the wall, and he realized all he did was end up creating, in many respects,
They were a joke. Until DS9, they were a joke.
Right, because they didn't seem to be, how can this society have not consumed itself by now?
Right. They were presented as greedy, no honor, no...
Ridiculous.
They were ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was not his original intent, though. Because he wanted them to be the big bads of the series.
That's correct, dangerous. But
that
first episode that they created them, when they're small of stature and just kind of ridiculous, the genie was out of the bottle. They could never recover from that.
They were also, incredibly sexist, and that women have no rights
and no roles,
and they were, and the whole sexuality thing was what is forbidden was reversed. In a very ridiculous way, that women were kept unclothed in Ferengi society, and that to put clothes on a woman was incredibly scandalous. Not because it was you removed the titillation, but this clothing was titillation, which some people we've had this discussion before. If you hide something, is it more titillating than when you show it? And people have their preferences. But still, what was always the worst of specifically Western and American civilization is what was presented as the Ferengis. And whenever the Ferengis were presented in a good light, it was like when Rom when he comes to Grand Nagus and turns everything upside down. So they did follow rules, but honestly, I don't know they were ever presented in a good way.
No. Because the intention was we're going to slam capitalism at every opportunity. And they were consistent with that.
But didn't that really essentially fall through? I mean, it was ineffective.
Well,
it was an ineffective slam because people ended up liking those characters.
Well,
but they liked them when they were less Ferengi-like. We are getting some real... Oh, because it's Thunder
Day.
Yes, so we were recording this on the day of Thunder over Louisville, and the air show is going on.
So
they're all headed down to the river right now. Yes.
So that's the sound of freedom, boys.
Yes. This is the day in which Kentucky has something like the third or fourth largest air force in the entire world. Yes. And so Francis reminded me I need to wrap this thing up real quick here, even though I won't get the half hour that you guys did for each of yours. But I think when they acted in the most un-Ferengi-like is when they were liked.
Oh,
okay. That is correct. Yes,
now, people did like the rules of acquisition because they were treated almost as a joke. Not always, because there were some rules of acquisition that were actually pretty good. Philosophically, they were good. Yeah. But then there were things like, war is good for business. Peace is good for business.
That's right.
The implication being that, the unscrupulous man can take advantage of either situation.
Yeah, there's money to be made no matter what.
Exactly, which is true. So, it's a truism, so it's kind of hard to argue with that. But they always presented it in a negative light.
But providing things people need in a society is an honorable task.
It is. That's why Roddenberry's whole system fails. It's effed up, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we have a third piñata now to hang.
Roddenberry's...
So we have Woodrow Wilson... We have John Stuart Mill.
Yeah. And
now we're hanging a Roddenberry piñata, despite our love for Star Trek.
It would seem to be that way, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because to me, Roddenberry's view of society had no intention of tying Trek to this quote, but I think his view of society, on one hand, is genius.
Yeah.
Because he has come up with a vision of the future where we have moved past all of the horrible things that we see today. The racism, the hatred.
Things that hold us back. Yeah.
Things that hold us back.
So it's very aspirational while at the same time being somewhat foolish.
Infantile. Is the way I would put it, because it's like when you were a kid, you know, or it's like Oprah. You get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. We can't all have cars. I mean, we can, but you got to work for it.
You got to earn it.
Yeah, we can't all be given everything. That's why the replicator is the most nonsensical thing ever. It's great technology. It's a great story device, but in reality, it would disrupt society so badly that
nobody ever leave the house. You'd never even get dressed. You wouldn't get out of bed.
Well, yeah. Well, the holodeck's the same way. You know, why would you ever leave it?
They did a whole episode on that with Barclay.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, you'd never have a normal relationship with another human being,
and society would die off very quickly.
Yeah, all you would do is because what would the holodeck be used for?
Yeah, sex.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's what technology is always used for.
That's right.
So yeah,
there's a reason VHS won over Beta. No, finish up. Let's get friends.
But that kind of genius, though, I would call that, to go back to the quote about a man. The most tragic thing is a man of genius who is not a man of honor. All of these things we've talked about really kind of falls into this, because they are tragic in the sense that they show that we know what we ought to be in the case of Socrates.
Yeah.
Right. And give me the exact quote, because I don't want to mangle it. What did you say yours was, Martin?
Calvin Coolidge. What we're not honored because of what we received, but what we gave.
Right. So it's recognizing that service to others.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So in a way, this whole Star Trek thing kind of ties that together itself, even though the quote is not necessarily where I was going to go with it. Because we're saying that we are trying to be what we ought to be,
right?
And we're trying to embody this whole idea of what we do is where honor comes from, but for what purpose? And recognizing the because I just don't see honor in having everything done for me.
Yeah,
I don't see honor in pretending that I'm something that I'm not.
Yeah,
without trying to work towards being that. Because you become what you want to be by acting like that. And eventually it just becomes who you are. So like, I want to be a great writer. What do? I write. And I try and get better at it. Right?
Yep.
And, the whole presumption is that there is a genius in all of us. Again, you want to talk about inherent dignity and all that. I view that all kind of the same thing. That potential for doing one thing great. Whether it's writing a book, whether it's painting a picture, whether it's being the best you can be, best friend you can be, best whatever. There's something you can do better than anybody else in your particular way.
Your own particular idiom.
Yes, your only particular idiom. Sorry, yes, idiom. That can only be done by you. And not doing that, or going along with the crowd, or pretending that you're something that you're not, that is, but not in the way we're talking about. Be what you pretend to be. Some people pretend to be bad things because of selfish reasons, and that's tragedy to me. Tragedy is almost by definition a lack of honor in any particular situation. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, because what are tragic things? When lots of bad things happen to people, whether it be a one person or 3,000 people who died on 9/11, those are all tragic things, and tragic things are never the result of people doing things honorably. Well, I don't want to say that, because you do things for the right reason, what you think are good things, what appear to be good things, but tragedy may still result. But as we like to say, there's always exceptions to a particular rule. Generalizations. Yes, we recognize generalizations are bad, but everybody uses them because they're good tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But generally speaking, tragedy comes from a lack of honor. So, that's essentially what this quote says to me. And whether however you want to put that, whether it's
I like that.
Doing things and expecting honor for not having done anything. Because you think you'll be great, or because of who you think you are, or pride, selfishness, whatever, or because Well, I mean, really, both your quotes really, the heart of it is pride and selfishness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this too.
Hubris.
Yeah.
Our favorite word.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Francis. What is up next?
We are going to finish our run through with the American Revolution.
We are? I thought we had more episodes. I've looked at the schedule because you know how I am.
We're going to talk about basically what happened after the forming of a government.
Forming of a government.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
the post-revolution. Well, okay, now you've won. What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah, they've won the war. How do they win the peace? And of course, that's a story all unto itself. So be here next episode, and we'll talk about it.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a review. That helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next time.